Today on Market Journal, many farmers put off estate planning until it's too late. We'll give you some ways to make the process a little easier to handle. Corn, beans, or something else? As you gear up for planting season, hear what advice our expert has. And hop, hop, hooray! Could the hop plant work in Nebraska? We'll tell you what researchers are doing to find out. This week's edition of Market Journal starts right now.
Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine.
Hey everybody, I'm Troy Moling and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. Good to see everyone. Hey, happy February. It's the shortest month, but lots to talk about in the world of agriculture. Our first story, agriculture is more than planting, growing crops, or tending to your herds. Taking the necessary steps to manage your estate for future generations can give you peace of mind and lessen stress on your family. Nebraska Extension's Allan Vyhnalek stopped by the show to remind us why estate planning is so important and to talk about some upcoming seminars for those looking to take that next step.
You know, I've actually had farmers say, well, I'll be gone, what difference does it make?
Sure.
I don't have to do that. But essentially what happens in a few cases, I don't think it's a majority, I think it's a minority, the families fall apart and the families are no longer there. The farmers make some interesting assumptions that in some cases are great, in some cases they don't work out very well. One assumption is that my kids will always want to keep the farm in the family. Another assumption is, the kids have always gotten along great, and when I'm gone, I'm sure they'll continue to get along great. If you want to have something happen with your asset, then you better make the plan. Don't assume anything. That would be my reason for why we want to have an estate plan and why it's so important.
And what are some of the consequences if you don't have that proper plan in place?
So if you don't have a good plan in place, the consequences can be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and or the land doesn't go to where you think it ought to go. I mean, the land doesn't end up doing what you want to have happen or have it do. So I think you have to give that some planning and some thought, and spending some money up front, which is going to cost you money. I mean, I'm not trying to say this is a cheap thing. It's going to be you're going to think it's relatively expensive, but spending a few thousand on a lawyer to get a good estate plan put together could be worth tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands on the other end. And believe me, I've talked to the families that have gone through that. I have talked to families that end up in a lawsuit, and who wins with the lawsuit? Not the families. Most of the time, the legal system, the lawyers win, basically. Not trying to make a joke there, but the families repeatedly tell me that they don't win. There's no winners if you have to go to a lawsuit. So trying to have a plan in place just avoids a whole bunch of heartache.
What are some of the biggest questions that folks ask you regarding this issue?
It depends on what generation you're in. I mean, it depends on if it's my parents' generation, or if it's my generation, or if it's my kids' generation. So, the biggest comment that people have coming out of our meeting is simply, man, I wish I had been at this meeting 3 or 4 years ago. So don't delay. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Biggest thing of people that are getting ready to plan or start thinking about planning is how do I deal with this so I don't have to worry about the nursing home taking my farm if I end up in a nursing home. That's kind of a biggie. You have to give that some thought, and you have to work with your tax advisor or a attorney or whoever your professionals are in your community to work on that. And so I have a hard time talking about that because two things. Number one, there's look-back period in place. I mean, if you divest yourself of your land asset or your asset, it's a 5-year look-back before you apply for Medicare. Okay, otherwise they can go back and try and get that land. Don't wait until you're 85 and say, oh my gosh, I might have to go to the nursing home. Don't do it then. You have to do it in your 40s, 50s, and even early 60s. Get it done.
And you're actually going to be having some seminars to talk about estate planning and throughout the state. What are some things that you're going to cover?
Well, we have our educational seminars pretty much all the time. Whenever I get farmers together to have an ag estate planning meeting, So on February 7th, I'll be in McCook at the fairgrounds in their community building in the afternoon. February 19th on a Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, I'll be Curtis at NCTA. And then on March 5th, we'll be in Lancaster County all day. And that'll be a more in-depth program. I have several speakers coming to that one, and it's going to be a terrific program. People are welcome to come to any of those meetings, and if you have questions about any of that, give me a call at 472-1771. That's my office phone number.
What are some of the big topics that you're going to be covering during these seminars?
At all the seminars, I personally will be talking about the importance of having a plan and why people don't plan. We did a survey in Nebraska of Nebraska farmers in the fall of 2017. People don't plan because they don't want to think about their own death. It's hard work, mental work. It's not physical. And people don't like to plan for a variety of reasons, indicating that they're still healthy or they're healthier longer or that sort of thing. It's a very interesting thing to think about.
It's easier to put things off.
It's easier
to
just
kick
to
the can down the road.
Let's not think about it. Let's not think about it. Put it off because it's easier to do that. But the point would be, the importance of planning is one of the things we talk about. The other thing we talk about is good communication, good family communication. I talk about a strategy of employing a family meeting for these things to get your input from your family. And that's a tricky thing to do because some families don't meet very well. So please understand that, and then we give some strategies so you can be successful with a family meeting. Then I usually have an estate attorney or an ag estate attorney or a financial planner or something like that with us, and for most of these meetings we do. And they talk about the basics of estate planning, the basics of getting together end-of-life documentation, your power of attorney and the durable power of attorney, your getting a living will done, some of those things. And then they'll also talk about some estate planning strategies.
If you want more information, you can visit agecon.unl.edu/succession. We've also posted a list of the upcoming seminars on our social media pages. Once again, the first meeting will be February 7th at 1 p.m. in McCook. That's in southwest Nebraska. It'll be at the Fairgrounds Community Building. Switching gears now, and some farmers in Nebraska are hoping that hops can help them diversify their fields. It's not a crop that's normally grown in the state. In fact, hops is more popular in the Pacific Northwest, where its role in making beer helps in meeting the demand of the large number of microbreweries there. Now, researchers in Nebraska are trying to leverage falling commodity prices and the state's own growing craft beer industry to expand the crop's footprint. UNL professor Stacy is always on the lookout for something special.
Well, my expertise is specialty crop production.
So when he was introduced to the hop plant, he had to know how it would work here.
We're looking at alternative crops suitable for Nebraska as an opportunity for farmers to diversify their farm income.
It may look like an out-of-control vine, but hops is teeming with possibilities for Nebraska farmers.
I tell you what, this plant is kind of an extremely unique plant because it does have a perennial underground. It has an annual top growth. It's day length sensitive and temperature sensitive. And so, a lot of us consider a plant to go through these stages, just kind of uniform, one to the next to the next. And this plant just has so many variables with it, which makes it extremely challenging, but quite interesting one to work with.
The first thing you notice is the size. The hop plant is tall and can shoot up to over 20 feet in a month's time. But the real treasure is the tiny flowers hidden behind its leaves. They're also called cones and play a role in manufacturing beer and herbal remedies.
The interest in hops with me was not only that it's used oftentimes for flavoring in beer or the bittering that they have in that, but there's multiple other opportunities in it. And one of the things is that they collect the oils, and those can be marketed to be used in pharmaceutical medicines, alternative medicines, or holistic type medicines. We have found also that it's being used in floral production, so there's just multiple things that you can use it for.
It's that opportunity for diversification that has some farmers wanting to learn more. Nebraska Extension has also created a hop coordinator program to educate and work with growers on how to produce a quality hop product that can be sold.
where are you going to sell them? That's been the biggest challenge for growers, is the market. And a lot of times that involves starting small and establishing, that quality product, and then working with brewers. Having a relationship with the brewer, and that can be a big challenge. They can't just call up a brewer and say, hey, I have some hops, would you buy them? There really needs to be a relationship established first.
Another challenge has been figuring out the best way to get the crop to grow in Nebraska's environment. The state has about 50 total acres of hops, including plots on UNLZ's campus and in Cass, Valley, and Buffalo counties. However, the research suggests that if you want the best possible yield from this crop, go west. Western Nebraska, that is.
We have multiple researchers looking at different aspects. Climatic situation is a big struggle. So we have a project that's in the planning stages right now for North Platte. We see the western side of Nebraska that we're getting the best performance and consistency of quality.
Latitude is really important. Day length is really important for hops. So we fall kind of just outside of that 45 to 50 degree latitude, which is considered ideal for hop production. So we still have the day length to where we can really we can produce hops well, and as long as you have irrigation, they seem to perform quite well out there and don't really have any disease or pest issues.
In addition to tracking the research, Katie has been instrumental in getting other members of the burgeoning hops community on board. With the breeding program, Nebraska has a lot of wild hops across the state, and so as kind of word has gotten out about the breeding program, people have contacted us and say, we have a wild hop here or there, and we are able to go and make some collections, and hopefully those will be incorporated into the breeding program. And if everything proves successful, maybe one day you'll be enjoying a drink in Nebraska that was locally grown. It's important to remember that patience is key when growing hops. It takes about 3 years to reach full harvest. After that, the cones have to be dried and made into pellets. Katie tells me that's an area that still needs more research, and it's a story we'll continue to track. We're moving on to markets now, and lots to talk about this week. As you make your planting decisions, are you changing up your crop rotations? Corn is still looking solid, which is good news for many, and demand for meat is sky high. Last week, we got a check on the international markets with Darin Newsom from Darin Newsom Analysis Incorporated. This week, Darin is back in the hot seat to give us the breakdown on what's happening here at home.
As I make the speaking rounds this year, most everyone I talk to, I always ask the question, what are your plans? Some of them don't even answer. But it seems to be that everyone's pretty happy with their rotation. So, last year we were kind of a 50-50 split between corn and soybeans. Are we going to see that huge swing to 4 million acres more corn, 4 million acres less soybeans? No. The markets just aren't there. Is soybeans buying acres away from corn? No. I think we could see some more go into cotton. Cotton's certainly acting like it's got more supplies, the potential for more supplies on hand. As I said, spring wheat could possibly take a few acres away up in the northern plains, but by and large, I'm not looking for a huge shift this year.
And with the new farm bill, industrial hemp now legal to grow, you see that moving the needle at all over the next few years?
Not in the next few years, but let's get 5-10 years down the road, and I think we are going to see more niche crops coming along. I've been asked, are pulse crops going to have a bigger influence in the North Plains? I certainly think so. I think we're going to see some more. I think we're going to see farmers trying more crops on these on some of this ground to get away from just the standard corn soybean rotation.
Any other tips for planting season for farmers out there?
It's all going to be weather again. It always comes down to what looks to be the most profitable for your situation. And no one can sit and say, well, this is or that is because of some ratio spread. The ratio spread is kind of funny to watch, actually. It doesn't really affect anybody, but a lot of analysts like to talk about it. What the bottom line is what's the most profitable? what looks to be the most profitable. What can you get locked in? You know, where are the insurance prices as we calculate them over the month of February? You know, where did those come in? What types of marketing opportunities do those provide? It all comes down to marketing.
And what about winter wheat? How's that looking as opposed to previous years?
You know, again, we were supposed to see increase in winter wheat acres because of the price. We saw this big run up last summer that was provided some opportunities to get some 2019 locked in. But the problem was weather just didn't help out. So now we've got a crop that went in when the ground was really wet. Some of it didn't go in at all. Now we're just facing a normal winter. You know, we went through a warm spell in, say, November through early December, then it turned cold again. I think it's just a normal looking crop right now. We won't know until it actually comes out of dormancy here, probably another 45 days or so.
And looking like corn's just still pretty solid?
Yeah, corn just doesn't really want to go anywhere. As I talked about in this morning's comments, both old crop and new crop are locked in 20-cent trading ranges with really no reason to break out of these at this point. If they do, then you just flip those ranges and it sets you some different targets. Seasonally, we do tend to see corn move up here in the spring, so I think there is that opportunity. And if we continue to see solid demand underneath the cash corn market, that should provide some support as well.
And switching gears to cattle and the meat market, meat supply is high, demand is high. Why do you think things have been so strong in cattle?
Yeah, I tell you, cattle pull the wheat here. And you know, from a technical point of view or a chart-based point of view, looking at the Feb and April live cattle contracts, they kind of pull the wheat, which likes to give head fakes. You know, you set a high and then you set a, you know, let's say you do a bearish pattern on your chart, and then you come right back and go to a new high. That's exactly what the cattle market did. We just have very strong demand right now. We had some concern over these winter storms that were going to be moving through the plains, and that always gives you a little bit of a weather market effect in the cattle market. So we saw some buying tied to that. Can we hold at this level? You know, back before they went away, cattle on feed reports continued to show increases, you know, year-to-year increases and so on. So we had plenty of cattle on feed. We seem to have plenty of beef in the market, but demand is just very strong right now. It's continuing to hold up the cash market, and as long as the cash market holds, then it looks like live cattle should hold as well.
So you think we'll plateau this year finally? What do you think?
I think we're going to plateau here for the winter.
Okay.
And, you know, could we pull back a little bit during the spring and then get ready for the big grilling season? I could see that happening. To me, from a technical point of view, it looks like cattle have kind of, you know, live cattle have kind of run their course. Feeder cattle have been pulling down a little bit. That usually doesn't last too long, those markets moving in different directions. Could mean that feeder cattle are getting ready to turn up seasonally. They tend to post a low in early Feb and then start moving higher. So if that happens, I don't look for a big break in live cattle. If feeders continue to go down, we continue to see selling in the feeder cattle, that might finally be enough to add at least one layer of selling or a little bit of pressure into the live cattle market.
And what about hogs? Still holding pretty steady there too?
Hogs, you know, with all of the news out of China and everything else, everyone's saying, why aren't the hogs doing better? Hogs are just being hogs. I think you're going to continue to see very wild swings in the hog market. Is it actually going, you know, it's going to go somewhere, but is it actually going to change course much? I don't think so. I think over the balance of the winter, we continue to see these wild swings, usually staying down towards the lower end of what we've established here over the last number of months.
You can catch part 1 of our interview with Darin on the Market Journal YouTube page. Next week, we'll be joined by Luke Beckman from Central Valley Ag. So if you have a question you'd like for me to ask him, email us or get in touch on social media, and I'll pass your question along. In other news, for Joel Bergman, using grain bags came out of necessity. About 5 years ago, he had some grain storage on some land that he let his son rent after he came back to the farm near Loomis. With no permanent storage and higher corn yields than he expected that year, he decided to use grain bags. And while that has involved a change in his process, that change, for the most part, has been a good thing. Read about the differences in management that come with using grain bags in the February Nebraska Farmer. Time now for weather with Nebraska Extension ag climatologist and Market Journal chief meteorologist Al Dutcher. And Al, it looks like the coldest part of the week is behind us, at least for now anyway. What can we expect for the week ahead?
Well, Troy, you're exactly right. We did see some cold air earlier in the week, and now we are going to see a nice broad warm up this weekend to kind of give us a little bit of a break. And by the time you average the cold and the warm from this weekend, we'll probably be pretty close to average for this week. Thankfully, the coldest of the air that came in through the northern plains did move to the east and northeast of us, so we've seen some exceptionally cold air across the upper Midwest. And some locations had near to all-time record lows, and several locations set all-time daily low temperature records, as we've seen temperatures anywhere from -20 to -35, depending on where you were looking in the area, and some significant snowfall across the Great Lakes region. For us, we've seen the warming temperatures start to build in during the middle of the week, and it looks like they've spread eastward, and they will continue through this weekend before the bottom once again falls out as we go into the early portion of next week. So as we look at the upper air models, first I'll draw your attention to this upper air low over California. This will start to spread energy into our region, but for today, because it is forming and digging deep, we're going to see the ridging build up in the central plains. That's going to allow the warmth to return into our region as high pressure is controlled across the southern Rockies. So most of the precipitation will remain to the west. Here we'll be under fairly sunny skies, and most of those locations should be into the 50s. A piece of energy shoots out as we go into tomorrow afternoon, and we see low pressure development at the surface. Cold air to our north. It looks like that convergence zone between the cold and warm air will occur to our north, so we'll get that overrunning precipitation with a widespread precipitation band across the central Rockies. We get a little bit of a break on Sunday as the trough once again starts to deepen and brings the warmth right back up, and we're looking at some 60s across the western part of the state and probably upper 50s across the eastern part of the state as low pressure gets its act together. That will help to pull the moisture up into our region Sunday night into Monday. Looks like snow to our north, and for us it looks like a rain to snow changeover. And then the main trough starts to progress toward the east as low pressure forms as we get into the day on Tuesday at the surface in western Kansas. That will rapidly move to the east, and so we see this wide expanse of snowfall. The models have consistently over the last few runs kept the storm system too far to the north, so I wouldn't be surprised if it drops a little bit farther south. And more importantly, as we get to the day of the Wednesday, that trough starts to lift out. We get cold high pressure starting to build into the northern plains, and so that will reinforce the cool air that will come in place, and the exit of this storm system will be primarily in the teens statewide. And then as we get into the day on Thursday, we start to see the ridge trying to build back into western Nebraska as high pressure starts to move into the region. That's going to bring a warming trend to the western part of the state. Will remain cool in the eastern part of the state, probably going back up in the 20-degree-plus mark range with scattered flurry activity. And then more importantly on Friday, we start to get to a zonal flow as yet another trough approaches the Pacific Northwest. So at the surface, we'll see a low developing in Texas. There's just not going to be enough moisture, and the speed of this low moving to the east is really not going to allow a significant amount of moisture northward. So we're just basically looking at flurry activity. And more importantly, as we look out farther into the future, the 8 to 14-day forecast, it takes that storm coming in the western United States next weekend, starts to bring the cold air into our region. So from next Thursday to the following Tuesday, it looks like the best chance for below normal temperatures will be to the northwestern United States, with lesser chances as you move toward the east. And in terms of precipitation, good precipitation from the southwest to the southern plains, and then that more importantly as you get into the central plains, the highest probabilities will be across southern Nebraska. So Troy, it looks like a nice weekend, and then the things fall apart as we go into next week.
Thanks, Al. For our final story today, romantic dinners and expensive gifts may be nice, but you can also spend this Valentine's Day with two other things you love: cover crops and soil health. Nebraska Extension is putting on the Cover Crop and Soil Health Conference on February 14th. And that'll feature speakers plus a panel discussion. We recently spoke with Extension educator Keith Glewen to learn more.
The Nebraska Cover Crop and Soil Health Conference will be held at the Eastern Nebraska Research and Extension Center on February 14th. And in recent years, our focus has been on cover crops and how they can be incorporated into a corn, soybean type of operation without livestock. We understand the importance of livestock in management of cover crops and the importance of livestock to the soil. We realize not all growers will include livestock into their operation. The thing that we try to convey in our message is you may not need to own the livestock, you may not need to own the cattle and not manage them, but you can partner with somebody to bring cattle to your operation and use the land base for the cattle production. And so this year we are bringing in some speakers that are going to talk about the importance of soil resources. And one of those speakers is Dr. David Montgomery from the University of Washington, who is a geomorphologist. And basically, he's going to give a report card on our soils in the world. Another person that we're bringing in that's had a lot of experience, hands-on experience in terms of soil quality factors is Jay Furr, who's an NRCS soil conservationist from North Dakota. And he will have some demonstrations as well as share instruction on his experiences with managing the soil and improving soil quality factors. And again, when we say soil quality factors, we're referring to the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil. The next speaker we have is Dr. Ray Ward, who many farmers in Nebraska are familiar with. Ray has a lot of experience on his own farm as well as being a soil scientist with management practices and how they influence soil quality factors. We are also bringing in 2 growers who have had a very positive experience with using cover crops in their farming operation. And they are Jeff Steffens from Crofton, Nebraska, and Scott Heineman from Winside, Nebraska. So as you can see, we got a group of rock stars for a program lineup, and we invite growers, landowners, anybody who's interested in improving the soil quality factors in their farming operation to attend our conference. We would like people to pre-register simply because we need to make arrangements for food and facilities and so forth. We can only accommodate 275 people. And right now we're at 175. So we still have some room, but it's important that they pre-register and they can find out where to call or where to go online to pre-register by going to CropWatch.
To find out more information and to register for the conference, visit cropwatch.unl.edu. Sponsors for the event include the Nebraska Soybean Board, the Lower Platte North Natural Resources District, the USDA SARE program, and the USDA Natural Resource and Conservation Service. That's going to do it for this week's show. One thing we did want to tell you about, we'd promised a calving story this week. We did have some breaking news, so that story will now be on next week's broadcast. So hope to see you right back here for that and a whole lot more. Until then, I'm Troy Moling. Thanks for watching.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.